an agent who was trying to get to the closing table, and guess what box they didn't check? Ding, 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 ding.
What did you say?
Compensation. What happens when you don't check a box?
It doesn't apply.
Right, you don't get paid. You can put the amount in there, you can put 3%, you can put the dollar amount, but if you don't check one of those 3 boxes, you are entitled to nothing. Zero. Come to David's class, you would know that because he talks about it a lot. So I say that to make sure that details matter. And we were able to negotiate a 1% to get them across the closing table to make it work for all parties. But how do you think that agent felt? Pissed at himself and pissed that he didn't raise his hand and ask for help when he needed to, and was grateful to get what he got. So my whole point in saying that is details matter. And when she talks about boxes, pay attention because I want you to get paid. All right, girl.
All right.
All you.
So I guess the first thing whenever you get a binding contract or when you get a contract, what's the first thing that we should do?
Send it to Brittany.
Hey,
Answer.
if you don't have
You gonna put it all over the room?
a view, check to make sure that it's signed and initialed and binding. I get contracts all the time that haven't been binded yet. And so my first question is, when did we go binding? And so on your desk or your tables, there should be a sheet of paper that looks like this. Feel free to write on this. If you like this and want to use this template, I can email it to you. I can put it on the resource drive, wherever, but feel free to use this as we go through today's class. I created this after too many years of working on the TC side and just using a sticky note and jotting important dates down, important, how many days due diligence, all of that good stuff. So GAR has a wonderful form, which is the reminder of important dates. And essentially, this is the same thing. It's just a little more detailed because you can get into the nitty gritty of what your exhibits are, what your special stipulations are, the required forms that go along with some of these selections on your purchase and sale agreement. So the first thing you're going to do is whenever you get a contract, you're going to ensure that it's been signed and initialed by all parties. Something that compliance is going to kick back, especially if you've been having a counter offer over multiple days. Sometimes the dates will get changed. You want to make sure that the offer date matches across all forms. And you'll notice a lot of times if you've got a counter, the counter offer date will change with each counter, but the exhibits will still be dated that first original offer. Compliance will kick that back. They want all of your dates to be uniform across. Make sure the contract is binding. So many times I get contracts, then I got to call the agent. Hey, when did this go binding? Make sure that that's on there. And then you're going to just start pulling off the important information on the contract. I didn't put the full purchase and sale agreement in this presentation because pages 2 through 8 are just filler. It explains what you're filling out on these first few pages. So if you have any questions about what you're filling out, you can access the middle part of that contract and it'll very detailed explanations of what these sections mean.
Please go read that. Please read what you're filling out.
Yeah. That way, whenever your clients call you and are like, what does this mean? You're not, you can very intelligently speak as to what it means and why it's been filled out the way that it's been filled out. So we are going to pull all the dates off of the contract. So you're going to, I kind of jump around a little bit whenever I'm doing this, and this form has changed a lot over the years. This is probably the tightest it's been. But this is information that you're going to need to know to, number one, put dates on your calendar, to know what is in your contract, and to make sure that what you're uploading to compliance is exactly what they need. That way you don't get the little, hey, we still need X, Y, and Z, or hey, this isn't compliant. So we're just going to go through and fill one of these out together and dissect the contract. I'm going to jump to the last page of the contract because I want to know when we went binding first, because that's going to help me know how many days for due diligence, how many days for appraisal, finance, all of that good stuff. So Our binding date is gonna be today, 6/9. I don't know if y'all can see this. So your binding date's gonna be 6/9. So we're gonna just put that on our little sheet. Binding date, 6/9. Also, while I'm on this page, you'll notice on this first line at the top, it says co-op, license, company, and code. I jot this information down because you're gonna need it when you complete your 117 and your 118 for FMLS. It's just good to have it so you're not flipping back and forth. I typically always keep this page of the contract open anyways, because I reference it a lot whenever it comes to the parties' names, the other co-op's information, especially if you complete the reminder of important dates, because it gives you options to put your co-op's information on there as well. So we've got I'm the listing agent on this side. So our buyer's agent is buyer's agent. And they are with ABC Realty. And that buyer's agent license number is real simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for this exercise. And the reason I grabbed their license number too is for whenever I take the property off the MLSs, you can actually put their license number in there instead of having to spell out their name. I figure it's a lot easier because a lot of times some people will spell their name in a weird way and I'll spell it wrong. And then I'm like, why are they not coming up? They are in the system, or sometimes they'll go by a different name than what their license number says.
A lot.
And so it's just easier to know their license number and plug that in the MLS and easily take the home off the market instead of spending time trying to search by their name. Also, the broker code, the MLS office code. You're also going to need that for the 117 and the 118. So I always just jot that down as well. And in this case, it's ABCR 01. And you'll notice a lot of times they correspond with the brokerage name, like ours is KWRS 04. Since I am the listing side, I know my people's names. At least hopefully you know your clients' names at this point. So I'm going to put the buyer's name on here. So just I know who my buyer is whenever I'm getting to the reminder of important dates and all of that stuff. In this case, we have Mr. Buyer and Mrs. Buyer. I know, right? Try to keep it simple. All right, and then at this point, I typically pop back to the first page of the contract because now that I know our binding date and I know who I'm working with, it's going to make it a lot easier for me to fill in the rest of this information. So we've got our address. This is 4490 Roberta Circle in Gainesville. This is where I live. And then you'll see that our purchase price is $500,000. And no, I will not sell it for that. And closing cost is $1,000. And then as you can see, we're just working our way down the contract right here. And then we've got our closing attorney. See, I kind of bounce around a little bit on this, but it works. So your closing attorney, I've got O'Kelly Buford office. And a lot of times people will not put a closing attorney phone number. I don't know why, but that seems to be a section that skipped. And then I'm like, where are we closing? It's great that we're using O'Kelly, but where? So be sure if you're not going to put the office, I always put which office and the phone number just so there's no confusion. But at a minimum, at least put the phone number if you don't want to put which office you want to close in. Our offer date is going to be 6/9. I took no time in accepting this contract because it looks good. We're going to close on 6/30. And then there is a temporary occupancy for 1 day at noon. So our possession is going to be 7/1 at noon. We're going to have $5,000 in earnest money due within 3 days and payable to O'Kelly. Another section that gets skipped more times than I would really like to admit is who is holding the earnest money. A lot of times they'll skip it and then they'll check the F510 to go along with it. And I'm like, okay, so at least I know the attorney's holding the earnest money, so I don't have to guess at that point. But don't forget to put in who holds the earnest money. That gets skipped more times than I would like to would like to admit. Also,
Can I add one thing to that?
yes,
Sorry.
please.
So if y'all have taken any of David's classes, he will always tell you we want to hold it first. O'Kelly wants to hold it second because we have a lot more control over what that looks like. So just if there's questions, those are always your first two answers on who's holding the earnest money.
And I went this route just so I could talk about the F511 that goes with it.
Yeah,
Did the amount go up? I thought I heard David say it went up to 15, is that right?
it went up to $50,000.
50.
$50,000. We now will hold up to $50,000.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay, thank you.
Now, I do not recommend
Oh,
anybody doing $50,000 because if something happens and it's our fault, aka your fault that you lose earnest money, guess who's gonna be on the hook for that?
We are.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so be mindful. But yes, we do now take up to $50,000.
Well, that's just stupid.
And you can.
And if KW is holding the earnest money, we do partner with earnest.com, which is a fabulous website that you can go in and set it up. You just need your client's email and phone number, which you should already have. And you can just set up the submission of payment through that. And then they'll get an email and a text message and they can submit their money and it'll go directly to KW. So you don't have to worry about bringing a physical check.
And to make it easy for people that can't find it, it's in the opportunity in the details section. There's a link that says earnest in the opportunity. So you don't have to go to a website, you don't have to do whatever, live in the opportunity and it's right there in command.
Okay, so we had that O'Kelly was holding earnest money within 3 days. So if we went binding today, that would be the 12th that earnest money is due by. And they're holding 5,000. And then we've got due diligence, we've got 5 days due diligence. So then that will be the 14th that our due diligence expires. And then at this point, we're gonna skip the appraisal and finance contingency sections because we're not that far on the contract yet. Let's see.
And for clarity, that's what the AC and FC stand for.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Another section that I wanted to point out that a lot of people skip on the purchase and sale agreement, the lead-based paint section. It's either yes or no. Don't skip the section.
And can I add one thing to that?
Yes, please, because it's probably something that I'm gonna address, but go ahead.
About if you have a listing. And what is the year? What is it? 1978. If you have a listing and you don't have that document included in your disclosures for the listing, somebody is going to ask for it. Put it in there.
You can't have a binding contract without a lead-based
That's right.
paint that has been signed by the seller first. It's very clear on the lead-based paint exhibit. Big bold letters. You cannot have a binding contract without it. So I don't even like to write an offer without one. Because what's the point? You can't have a binding contract.
Right.
So, and then as, in addition to the lead-based paint exhibit, make sure that you're having your people initial or sign the lead-based paint pamphlet. This is also a requirement from compliance. You'll notice when you go in command, it'll tell you everything that they need. Make sure if it's lead-based paint, you're fulfilling all of those obligations. There's now also a seller's broker's notice and a buyer's broker's notice. These need to go to all parties regardless of who pays compensation. So if you're the listing agent, I do this on the front end. Whenever I'm doing my listing agreement and I'm pulling all the disclosures together, I send them the seller's broker's notice for lead-based paint. I also send them the pamphlet to sign in addition to the exhibit itself. Go.
Yeah, y'all, that's huge, what Brittany's telling you. Do y'all know what the fine is per initial on that exhibit if it's not done in the correct order?
Isn't it 10,000?
It's $22,000
it's gone up.
$163 per initial. So y'all, it's huge.
And I see contracts all the time that the lead-based paint exhibit's not filled out properly. It happens more than I would really like to admit.
Yeah, probably all of us TC, it's literally burns us to the core when we see them like that. Save your money.
Yes. And you can't add it to the contract later. It's not, you can't put in a special stipulation. All parties agree that we'll add the lead-based paint exhibit within 24 hours. No, because you don't have a binding contract. It's very clear. Okay, so, and then also make sure that you're checking your brokerage relationships. A lot of times if the buyer will send over, the buyer's agent will send over a contract, if you're the listing agent, they won't know what your agreement says. So they'll sometimes leave it blank. Just make sure to put eyes on it and check the box that you're representing your person either as a client or a customer. If you're working with somebody that's also Keller Williams Atlanta Partners, your designated agent. So make sure to check that fourth box and put your names in that section. I've never checked box 3 because we don't do dual agency. So no one should ever have box number 3 checked in that section. And material relationship disclosures. I see these a lot of times as well. If you have to question whether you should disclose it, just disclose it. It's that simple. If it's, oh, I'm not sure, we're not technically related, but maybe, just put it on there. It's better safe than sorry. Then we'll move on to the next page.
What'd you say the ACFC was? ACFC, what's that?
We're not there just yet.
Okay.
We're gonna, once we
I thought
get
you said
our
already.
financing exhibit.
I
we'll
get
cover
it.
this.
Cool.
Also make sure that everything's initialed. A lot of times people will skip the initials on the first page of the purchase and sell agreement. I don't know why. Also on the second page of the counteroffer for some reason. Just random initial places. Just make sure that everything is signed and initialed where it's supposed to be. All right, I took out the meat of the contract so we could just jump straight ahead. Now we're on our exhibits. So you can see all of our exhibits are on this beautiful side. We can actually come through and put what's what. So for exhibit A, we know that it's going to be the buyer broker compensation exhibit. Exhibit B is the closing attorney holding of earnest money, which is the F510. For C, we've got the community association disclosure. D is the FHA loan exhibit. E is the lead-based paint exhibit. F is the legal, which is also very important on that first page of the contract. You've got the option to check legal description or deed book and page. If you're part of the coaching program, we will give you the legal description for your contracts. Just reach out to us. If not, you can create an account with gsccca.org. It's $15 a month for just the basic account. You can access deed book and page records, and it's 50 cents per page. It's well worth having an account. A lot of times some closing attorneys will provide that for you. I do not think O'Kelly does that anymore. So get the account. It's a business expense. Next up is going to be exhibit G, which is the seller's property disclosure. H is going to be the temporary occupancy agreement for the seller. There's 2 temporary occupancies, one for the buyer, one for the seller. I don't think I've ever seen one for the buyer in all the years that I've been doing this, which is good because you don't want to give the buyer access early anyways. And then make sure that you are also including the KW ABAD as an exhibit. And that covers all of our exhibits. And then the next page, now our purchase and sale agreements are 11 pages. They've kind of stretched everything out with the new June updates. So all of your special stipulations are going to be on page 10. And the special stipulations of this contract are that the seller is going to provide a supreme home warranty from 210, not to exceed $730 and to be ordered by the selling agent. All of that information is very important. I can't tell you how many times I get a contract and it just says home warranty. Where's it coming from? Who's paying it? What's the maximum amount that we're doing here? All of this information is very important because sometimes you'll get to closing and nobody will have ordered the warranty because they thought the other person was going to do it. So having all of this information very clearly spelled out as to who is responsible for what, the maximum amount it's going to cost, and who it's coming from are very important things. There are special stipulations that you can use. I'm sure there's a home warranty special stipulation. This one I've used forever, and I feel like it covers all of the bases, and it's been approved by the brokers, so that's just what I've rolled with. And on this side, you'll notice there's other things as well. There's actually a home warranty section where it says home warranty company blank, the amount blank, and who orders it blank. So you can put all of this information on here. You were just dissecting the contract and having everything in one place. And then the second one is that the seller will provide the buyers with an official Georgia wood infestation inspection report, by a licensed Georgia pest control contractor no later than 5 business days prior to closing. Again, you're stating who is providing it, when they're providing it, and who they're getting it from. And number 3 is the repair and retreat termite bond. Again, from a licensed contractor within 5 days of closing. So everything's very clearly spelled out where it's coming from. And then you can just, on your little sheet, there's also a termite section right above the home warranty, whether it's the letter or the bond, and then there's a little dash that I put, the letter is due by 6/25 because 5 days before closing, and then we also need an R&R bond. Any questions so far? And then we're back to the last page of the contract. Everyone's signed. Everyone's information's there, it's binding. So this is a good, clean purchase and sale agreement that is ready to rock and roll, go to the lender and the attorney. Now we're gonna get into the exhibits. So this is your buyer brokerage compensation exhibit that we wrote down as being exhibit A on our sheet. We just want to confirm that this is the correct. So the listing agent, you're gonna want to make sure that the buyer's agent checked the appropriate box. If you didn't have a conversation with them up front and they didn't know that you were paying the compensation directly as opposed to the seller, they might just go ahead and check that the seller's directly paying it. So whenever you're getting this offer and you're going over it and before you send it to your clients to sign, make sure that this section's correct. A lot of times I've got to go back and change this too. I don't know about any other TCs in the room, but they'll automatically just assume that the seller's paying it because they didn't have a conversation with the listing agent. But the listing agent's listing agreement says that they are the ones paying the compensation. It's an easy strike through an initial on the front end, but just something to be mindful of whenever, because we're going to get to the instructions to closing attorney in a little bit, and then this will contradict that if it's not caught on the front end.
Do you see that there's one more than the other?
I'm seeing now more that people are not asking up front, and I'm seeing it this way, where the seller is the one that's paying the compensation.
I think the biggest thing is making sure that what you just said, that this matches what your listing agreement says. Like, it's not just a random whatever, like those have to correlate. There's a reason that you're checking one or the other.
Yeah. And I'm seeing a lot of agents are not having that conversation with the listing agent up front now. Especially whenever I'm writing offers for agents. One of my questions whenever I'm going through is who's paying the compensation? And it's, I don't know. How much is the compensation? I don't know.
Jeez.
Come on, Gail.
So these are important questions to have. Now I get, like, sometimes you can't get a listing agent on the phone. Sometimes it's like they don't even want to sell the house that they've got their sign in the front yard on. At that point, you just want to get an offer over. This is the best course of action, because at that point, you at least are saying the seller is paying your compensation, even if you don't know what their listing agreement says. It's going to be up to that listing agent at this point, whenever they're going through the contract. Oh, no, that's not correct. Let's do a strike through, put it on B, and everyone initial and move forward.
Can I say something about that?
Please.
I had a situation where they put in an offer and I didn't catch that, and we weren't offering 3%, which typically I do. I'm not, it's just a whole different situation. But anyway, and but we had to, which means I had to come down on mine, because I didn't catch that when they sent the offer. So it's something, even when you get an offer, to pay attention to that. Because if it's not coming from whoever, or it's not, that's what it's gonna be stuck at no matter, you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense to y'all, but yeah.
That was a hard lesson, Lisa.
It was. Yeah, I'm like, not offering, it's like, oh yeah, we got it, and she's like, well, we've already, and I was like, dang it, yeah, we already signed it, you're right.
Now, the ones that cost you money are.
And it's because when that first started, and I wasn't paying attention to that as much, because it was new, and I was like, oh crud, I didn't think about that, so yeah. I look at that every time now, and I make sure, even when I'm making an offer though, if I don't know, I'd put in there, the seller's paying it 3%.
Yeah.
And if they sign it and don't say anything, it's like, sorry, you already signed it. So it works,
Yep.
Anyway.
And then on all the initials are on the next page. I've seen signatures here too. As long as it's signed, initialed, I don't think it really matters. Compliance hasn't kicked it back with a signature. But I think they've all been updated to initial blocks at this point. Closing attorney acting as holder of earnest money. So this is the exhibit. There is a form that goes along with it that the attorney must sign saying that they acknowledge that they will be the holder of earnest money. These two forms go together and are required by compliance. A lot of times you'll submit your contract and you won't have the F511 signed by the attorney yet, and they'll kick it back going, hey, just a reminder, we need the F511. So just make sure that you get that from the closing attorney. Also, make sure you have an alternate holder. I see a lot of contracts that don't have an alternate holder of earnest money. Sometimes they will have put an attorney that won't hold earnest money on there. That has happened. And they just didn't know that, so they didn't know to put either their brokerage as the holder or our brokerage.
That question either.
So make sure that there is an alternate holder on there just in case that attorney decides that they don't hold earnest money or they don't want to hold money for this transaction.
And that would be only used for over 50 grand, or if you just agree that these guys are holding it instead of KW.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
That would be if it's over 50,000,
That's just if the attorney's holding it.
which most of the time, we don't want them to do that, is that correct?
The brokers prefer that the earnest money stays here in KW.
Right.
But if you have to use a closing attorney to hold it, make sure that you're using this exhibit and the corresponding F511. that
Can you
goes
give
with
me an
it.
example why they would hold it and not us?
Some people just like for the attorney to hold it so that you don't have to worry about coming and picking up an earnest money check to take to closing.
Okay.
Sometimes it's easier if they've got like a back-to-back transaction and they're selling and then buying. They just want all the funds in one place because they plan on using the same attorney for both.
Sometimes the buyer's agent just would prefer it be held by a neutral party as opposed to the listing agent holding it or somebody like that.
Should we have that conversation with them? Or just,
Well, I mean, I think any of this is having, like what you just talked about, if somebody's not holding the earnest money, it's because the agent submitting the offer didn't have a conversation with their closing attorney. Hey, are you willing to hold the money or not? Hey, who's paying the compensation? I mean, I think those are just conversations that we all have. But, I mean, if I've got my buyer, I usually will keep it here.
yeah,
Versus, I mean, if we're on the listing side, it's a little different, but I mean, you can certainly have that conversation.
This is more just an exercise so everyone can see, if you were to go this route, this is what's required and these are the forms that go with it. So, but a closing attorney's information on that page, everyone has initialed. And then this is the F511 that goes to the closing attorney. It's just stating that they agree to hold the earnest money. And it's got everyone's contact info. And then they'll sign this and return this once they've got your contract. Community association disclosure. Please, for the love of God, if you are a listing agent, have your people call the HOA and find out if there are initiation, transfer, or admin fees. And if they come back and say there's not, tell them, you know what? Let's just put $1,000 in there anyways.
Let's put 2,000 in there now because it's gone up a lot.
It's crazy. And they don't read these forms, even though we go over them with them and we have the conversations and we say, look, whatever you don't disclose, you're on the hook for at closing. It's all a whirlwind and they don't hear you. But I cannot tell you how many times I've had to go back to a listing agent and say, hey, your people didn't disclose X, Y, and Z, and now they're $2,000 for an initiation fee on the settlement statement. And then you've got to call them and say, hey guys, remember this conversation we had? Of course they don't remember because it's been a month or so ago at this point.
That's just it.
But then they're $2,000 that they thought they were gonna walk away with at closing, they're now having to pay to the HOA because they didn't disclose it. So make sure that there is something on there, even if they say there's no initiation fees, I always just have them put something on there to protect themselves. And then you cannot change this. Once you go binding, any changes that are made to this, your people are on the hook for. So let's just say you go under contract, you put 500 on here as an initiation fee, and you find out it's 1,000. Your people are eating $500 because you cannot modify this form afterwards. So just on the front end, just do the little bit of extra work and make sure your people understand how important it is to reach out to their HOA to confirm this information.
Can I add one thing to that?
Please.
So sometimes, through conversation with agents, they've depended on the homeowners to have this conversation. And they call the HOA, and HOA president, John Doe, has never done this before and it's his first day on the job, and he answers it. So you want to make sure that the person that you're asking actually knows the right answer and they have looked in the bylaws, understand what the rules are. And the biggest one that gets missed is the transfer fee, not just the initiation fee. Transfer fee, hands down, will bite everybody more than half the time. But just make sure that the person that they're actually communicating with actually know where to find the information and have done this before. Because a lot of times, they're all volunteers, right, in HOAs. This is, you know, they live in the neighborhood or whatever. Don't just assume that they are the one all be all.
And one of the things that we've noticed too is that, like she said, even if you have the conversation, even if you know, have the conversation again after they filled it out, regardless, when it comes down to closing and they're gonna get dinged, they're like, well, you should have told me that. We also put it in our listing agreement in the special stipulations that we are not responsible for any of that information on this form that they leave off or that they fill in incorrectly. So when I get that phone call that says, well, you should have told me, I highlight it and send it to them. It is here, it is here, it is here that we have told you this and that we, you know, so if it's a text message or a phone conversation, doesn't matter. It's in writing.
And they group the transfer initiation and admin fees together on this form. So if you get an email from your client that says, you know, it's listed out individually, add them together and plop it on there. I've seen that bite more people in the butt than it really should. Everyone has signed, so that exhibit is good to go. FHA exhibit is D. So FHA, VA, and USDA loans do not have appraisal contingencies. They run up to the day of closing. That's why you don't see an appraisal contingency spot on here for you to put a number of days, because it runs up to closing. So finance contingency, they asked for 14 days. So that will put our financing contingency ending on the 23rd, since our binding date is today, the 9th. Another thing I see a lot is people not putting an approved lender or even sending a pre-approval letter. From a TC standpoint, it's really hard to know who the contract needs to go to from a lender standpoint. So I understand a lot of people don't want to put an approved lender on here because that means that you have to have a loan denial letter from that lender. If you don't want to put someone in there, at least make sure that if you're doing it yourself, you know the lender information. If you have a TC, make sure they know the lender information. It helps things run a lot smoothly on our side when we have all of that information up front.
Don't accept it if you're the listing agent. Get the information.
I at least, whenever I'm the listing agent, I like to have a conversation with the lender before I accept an offer.
Yep.
That's just me. Also on here, a lot of times, things that I see skipped. The mortgage insurance premium, that gets skipped a lot. Lender required repairs. I also see that gets skipped a lot. I don't know why. These are things that should be filled out on the front end. Also on this little sheet, there's a handy dandy little section towards the bottom, FHA, VA, LLR, and then the sewer. Who's responsible and how much? Just more information that you're dissecting from the contract that's on this sheet. And that way, when you do get the appraisal back and there is a required repair, you know who's responsible and the maximum amount that they can pay. I've seen a lot of things pop on appraisals lately, even conventional appraisals. Had a handrail on a conventional appraisal last week. So it's like the wild, wild west out there right now. So just make sure that if you're doing a government-backed loan exhibit, make sure that you are filling in these sections. Also, there is a conventional stip for lender required repairs. I cannot think of the stip number right now. But there is one that you can put on your purchase and sale agreement in the special stipulations for conventional loan lender required repairs. That way you can put a cap on that too. And then everyone has signed, so that one's good to go. Lead-based paint. This is what we were talking about earlier. Section A, they have to select one or two. Same with section B. It has to be one or two. The seller they either know that there's lead-based paint or they don't know. And if they don't know, that's okay. Have them sign next to the corresponding one, whether they have the knowledge or not. If they have the knowledge, they need to provide the disclosures, and then you'll list what those disclosures are. If they don't have knowledge, there's no reports, and that's fine too. Make sure that the buyer that you're initialing see It's one or two. You've either received copies of the reports if the seller checked yes, or you didn't receive reports if there are none. They always want to initial D. They have received the pamphlet. You sent this to them and they initialed it already, along with the disclosure that you sent. E, I don't know why people skip this one too. They either received a 10-day opportunity to conduct a lead-based paint assessment or they didn't. A lot of times I'll see people check no, and that's totally fine. But don't skip the section. At least make sure that your people have initialed in every section. On page 2 of this is where you as the listing agent or the buyer's agent will have to initial. And it also states that the buyer's agent receives compensation from the seller either directly or indirectly, that they have to provide that broker's notice disclosure for the lead-based paint. I actually think that's the next page. Oh, no, that's the pamphlet. So that's what the pamphlet looks like. It's like 40 some odd long pages. I just had my people initial the first page that they've received it and then upload it into Command for compliance. This is the seller's broker's notice. These are new forms. I feel like these came out in January. This is what I was talking about earlier. So regardless of who is paying your compensation, whether it's the seller directly or the listing broker, send this with your offer. There's the seller's broker's version. If you are the listing agent, please make sure that you are sending this whenever you send your listing agreement with all of the disclosures in the brochures. Next up is going to be our legal exhibit. Again, gsccca.org. Perfect, worth every penny. I use it heavily for my TC business, and I think I only pay, by the time I pay my monthly fee and then all my daily, like my page print offs, I'm less than $45 a month for that. So it's worth the investment. Seller's property disclosure. Whew. Man, make sure if you're the listing agent that you are checking these before you hit the market and before you publish them on the MLSs. I can't tell you how many times people will skip. Well, my favorite is, when was the dwelling constructed? That's on tax records, guys. We know that. Like, people skip that all the time. The age of the HVAC. Really, it's any of the ones that they have to go in and put information on. It's not the dots so much that they have to check. It's where they actually have to go in and put the information that I see skipped more than anything else. So just put eyes on it, make sure it's complete, because I can guarantee you if you don't, a buyer's agent's going to call you and have a question about something that's empty on this form. And if you do check yes, or your seller checks yes, make sure that there's an explanation. It doesn't have to be lengthy. Just, yes, we filed an insurance claim. It was the roof in 2021. That's good enough. A lot of people skip the termite section too. I don't know why. But it's
It's interesting how you get litigation on 12 and you say how many claims they have and you have a number 1 on there.
I don't.
Nick, the last page you were just on.
Oh.
12F. You have the number 1 there, and then there's no yes or no. They don't have to explain anything.
for the insurance claims.
Yeah.
Yes. And they don't. And while you're in your due diligence period, especially if you're the buyer's agent, that is a perfect time to get them set up with Georgia Home and Auto so they can run a clear report to know what has happened within the last 7 years of that property. And that right there is a key component of due diligence, especially if you're the buyer's agent, because you won't know what that one claim is. Because sometimes they won't even put, like, I put there that it was the roof 2021 because there was one claim filed on the roof. But if I was to leave that blank, the explanation blank, but only have that there was one claim, well, what's that claim? That's a call that you're going to get because they're going to want to know what that claim is.
Mhm.
Additional explanations if needed. And please make sure that your people check what's staying with the property. I can't tell you how many times I get these. And this section, they haven't checked anything. So are you mean to tell me they're taking the microwave and the range and all of the stuff? They're probably not. because on your listing that you've put out to the world, it says that the range is staying and the microwave's staying and the refrigerator's staying. So what is it?
They take it.
Make sure if it's not marked on here, they can take it. So make sure that what you want to stay with the property is either marked on here or you ask for it in your contract. Everyone has signed, so that one's good to go. Next up, we got our temporary occupancy agreement, and we are using this because we had a temporary occupancy. It doesn't matter if it's 1 hour after closing. You need a temporary occupancy agreement. I like to make it hurt. If they're not gonna vacate, it's gonna cost them a pretty penny. I put $1,000 in mine. I want them out. I don't like doing temporary occupancy agreements. There's too many things that can go wrong afterwards. Heard a lot of horror stories over the last couple of weeks. So I don't like to do them and I want to make it hurt. Not only that, I like to have an escrow hold back. I like to have the closing attorney hold some money back in case for some reason they don't vacate this property or they don't clean it out or they don't do what I've asked them to do. You've got some recourse for your people at that point. If your people need to hire a junk removal company because the seller left a ton of junk there, you've got money that's held in escrow that you can use to take care of these things. So just be very detailed in what you want and make sure that you're protecting your people.
And make sure your attorney's willing to do that, because some attorneys won't anymore.
That's true.
Charge full money.
Sometimes they will. But I will say, whatever the attorney charges, it's worth you footing the bill for it and make sure that your people are protected, because I guarantee you, if something goes wrong, you're gonna wish you had that money to protect your people. And then they're gonna remember that whenever they're telling their friends and family about their experience that they have with you.
Or you're gonna have to pay for trash removal, which I have done.
Me too. Yeah, I'm sure we've all paid for things after closing that were big learning experiences, and that's where a lot of this comes from. Oh, everyone has initialed at the bottom, so we are good to go. Our ABAD, make sure you are using the previous or the newest version, not the previous version. The new one has a revision date of March 2026 on here. I had someone use the old version from January, like right after we had done the switch, compliance kicked it back. So if you want to get paid at closing, make sure you have this and it's signed by everyone. Sometimes you'll end up working with an iBuyer. Sometimes Open Door doesn't want to sign them.
New construction.
New construction won't sign them. Just at that point, compliance is really good about if they see a new construction purchase and sell agreement in your opportunity, they won't push you, especially if in your buyer consultation folder, you've already got that ABAD in there. They won't push hard for it, but just make sure that you're getting this signed by your clients on the front end. And if for some reason the other party won't sign, send compliance a little note and say, hey, I've tried to get this signed, they just refuse. All right, and then here's page 2, everyone has signed. Instructions to closing attorney. This is gonna kind of go back to your buyer brokerage compensation exhibit and your listing agreement that you've got in place. You wanna make sure that these match. So luckily it does, because the compensation on the buyer brokerage compensation exhibit, it did say that the seller was paying the buyer's brokerage on there. So that's correct. And then whatever the seller's paying the buyer's broker at the top. Now these could be different. They could be the same. It could be, you know, whatever. There also could be some compensation being paid by the buyer to the buyer's broker. If let's just say the listing broker is not, or the seller's not paying the compensation that the buyer's broker has stated in their agreement, you can have your people pay on here too. So you could have compensation paid by seller to buyer's broker, and then you could also have compensation paid by buyer to buyer's broker as well. You could have any number of these checked as long as it matches your listing agreement or your buyer brokerage agreement. No more than what you've already had your people agree to. And sometimes on new construction, they'll offer broker bonuses or a 4% or 5% compensation. If you want to take advantage of those, you need to make sure that your BBA reflects that on the front end and not go back and amend it.
That's right. You miss it, you cannot go back.
Yep, so know your worth. Don't be afraid to ask for what you're worth. And I've had conversations with clients too that said, you know, hey, I know that we're thinking new construction. I'm going to put 5 chickens on here because that's what I want to get paid. And then if for some reason it ends up being only 3 chickens, I'm not gonna charge you the difference, but I want to make sure that if I can get 5 chickens, I'm gonna get 5 chickens. So know your worth.
Chicken's great. Chicken's great.
If for some reason you are in the process and whatnot of the contract and you need to, God, I'm overtime badly. You're gonna cover a home warranty for somebody, or you're gonna do a concession to one of your people. Put it on this page in the section 6, A or B, depending upon what side you're on, how much, where it goes to, all of that good stuff. I've noticed a lot of people have their clients sign this section down here. These sections only need to be signed if the buyer is paying the buyer's worker compensation or if the seller is paying the buyer workers compensation. If the listing brokerage is paying the buyer workers compensation, your clients don't need to sign this at all.
Say it again.
If your clients are not paying compensation, they do not need to sign the bottom.
But even if the seller's, as long as, only if the seller is paying you directly, not through the listing agent, right? Is that what
If
you're
seller
saying?
is paying buyer brokerage, then they have to sign. And that's why my people sign here, because they're paying the buyer brokerage, not me as the listing agent. But if as the listing agent, I was paying the buyer broker's compensation, I would not have my sellers sign this form because they don't need to. They've already signed my listing agreement and that's covered in that. So it clearly states right above, and again, people just don't read. They just think, okay, there's a signature block, I need to pop a signature on there. But you don't have to unless they're actually paying the compensation. Wow, it's so much more to do.
You can have a part 2.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'm like,
You're about to teach a class.
I know, right? I'm like not even halfway through my stuff. No, if you don't already have a TC, I think after this exercise, you might be wanting to get one because there is a lot of stuff that goes into it.
Everyone should
Just
have.
dissecting the contract.
Well, really quickly, so I know there's some new faces in the room. Do y'all have any questions about what any of these acronyms mean? Does everybody know what all the acronyms on here mean? Does everybody know what LOR is?
Lender required repairs.
What about the LBP? What about it?
FX.
Mm-hmm. The AC and the FC at the top?
Appraisal contingency and finance contingency.
Mhm. PLF?
Proof of funds.
Any other ones on here? Anybody needs to know what it means?
Y'all all better know what the ABAD means.
Don't wait till I leave the room.
I'd just like to say, I made that.
Yeah. So that's just dissecting the contract, but there's a whole lot more that goes on.
We can do a part 2.
Okay,
Just remember where you left off.
right here.
There you go. There you go. Where
That's
you
how
left
far
off.
I made it.
Was that helpful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That stuff off. I was talking to my husband over the weekend. I'm like, I've done this for so long and I just go on autopilot that it's like, and I don't have a system in place, unfortunately. Thank you, Justin. But I kind of do now.
No.
So I'm sure there's other TCs in the room that are like, oh, she forgot X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I'm sure I did.
Okay, and she's so good. She has her own notepads made custom with her little check boxes.
And that is because I drove her crazy for so long.
Is that the Gale notepad?
Yeah.
You need to patent that.
Yeah, but it's the detail stuff, and I know, like, as far as it's not like the unicorns and butterflies and like all the fun stuff, but this is so important. And like I was saying, we just had a situation last week where somebody forgot to check the box. They put on there what they wanted, but unless you check the box, it doesn't count. And that was a really, really hard lesson. And so the details, taking this slow, line by line, asking questions, even though they might feel like they're silly, are just super important.